Picture a man, Brooks Brothers suit, white gloves, a gold-tipped cane, a Homburg hat, because out here in the Mojave Desert in 1958, a man with vision apparently also has a hat budget. He's standing on a hill, not panning for gold, not surveying cattle. He's looking out at 82,000 acres of creosote bush and sun-hammered clay, the way a composer stares at a blank page before the first note exists. He's chosen this hill deliberately, named it after Galileo, because Galileo, you'll recall, looked at the universe and saw what no one else could see yet. Nat Mendelsohn, sociology professor, Columbia man, Czech immigrant, who came to this country at 5 years old and arrived at the Mojave Desert at 53, believed, with the sincerity of a man who had spent his career studying why people live where they live, that he was about to do the very same thing. He was going to out Los Angeles, lay down streets for 400,000 people, design a metropolis before the first foundation was poured, infrastructure first, community second. People would come. 67 years later, California City is the third largest city in the state of California by land area. It's bigger than Redwood National Park. It has a mayor, a zip code, a high school football team, and a city council that meets on the second and fourth Tuesdays every month. It has 14,000 people. Do the math again. 400,000 designed for 14,000 delivered. That's not a city that grew slowly. That is a city that got stood up at the altar. This is Drive-Thru Towns, and I'm your host, Andrew Wilcox. We're going to take Highway 14 northbound, somewhere between Mojave Town and the part of the desert where your radio signal starts dissolving into static in evangelical programming. You'll see a green sign, California City, next exit. Maybe you take it. Maybe you don't. If you do, here's what you get. A gas station, a nail salon, a donut shop, a Circle K with a parking lot that smells like radiator fluid and ambition, a handful of real estate offices with sun-bleached listings in the window, and the particular stillness of a waiting room that nobody's walked into since the late 90s. A water tower, a blinking yellow light, and then, before your foot even lifts off the gas, you're through it, back on the highway, and it's already just a sign in your mirror. That's the con. That is always the con. At 70 or 80, or in this part of the country, just heck, go whatever speed you want. California City looks like nothing. It registers as negative space, the absence of Las Vegas, the not quite Palm Springs of it all. But pull up a satellite image of this place just once, and I promise you, you will not sleep right. From above, California City looks like a city got dropped from a great height and shattered. Grids radiate outward for miles in every direction. Streets paved and curved and named. Cul-de-sacs looping back on themselves. Intersections standing at perfect right angles in open desert with not a single structure attached to them. It looks like an Etch-A-Sketch left on the hood of a car. Skydivers trained here, deliberately targeting specific intersections to improve their accuracy, because the grid makes better practice coordinates than anything a human would actually build. Air Force pilots use it as a visual landmark. The grid is so large, so complete, so committed, that it reads from altitude less like a failed suburb and more like a monument, an accidental land sculpture, a message to an alien civilization that says, well, we tried. Mendelsohn didn't stumble here. He reasoned here. And that is the detail that changes everything. This was not gold fever, not a railroad gamble. not a saloon that got too big for its britches. This was a sociologist with a thesis. His argument: post-war Los Angeles was boiling over. The San Fernando Valley was already going. The suburbs were eating the desert in every direction. Somebody was going to build the next great California city. And if you got there first, before the growth arrived, you could own the whole thing. By 100 miles north of LA, out past the last commuter's patience, in the Mojave on what used to be cotton farms and alfalfa fields, pay $6 million for 82,000 acres. Lay down the streets, name them, and just wait. His engineer told him there was 1 million acre-feet of water a year underground. The marketing brochure said enough for 50,000 residents. Someday, maybe 1 million. The U.S. Geological Survey looked at those numbers at the following year and, using words measured carefully to avoid the phrase, "You've got to be freaking kidding," just disagreed. It didn't matter. The public wanted to believe. And in Southern California in 1958, belief was the only building permit you actually needed. So they built, not just the part that makes a city, they paved 60 miles of road in a single month. They put in water mains, electrical lines, a motel, a golf course. Architects from South Pasadena drew up a 20-acre artificial lake with a floating pavilion and geometric parasol flourishes that looked like the future was already here and wore a very confident hat. They named the streets after car brands: Cadillac Boulevard, Chrysler Drive, Dodge Court, Chevy Drive, Buick Boulevard, because nothing announced the American dream quite like a street sign for a car you don't own yet in front of a lot you'll never build on. And they named one street Rommel, after the Nazi general. The Desert Fox. Someone in 1958 thought that was charming, and no one since has had the budget to disagree. Buses rolled down from Los Angeles every weekend, packed with buyers who had never seen the land they were already paying for. A radio jingle played: "Buy a piece of the Golden State. You'll be sitting pretty when you come to California City." Lots went for $990, $90 down, $1,750 a month. A 3-bedroom house for under $10,000. One observer later described the atmosphere of those early sales weekends as a buying hysteria. You could almost smell it: the sawdust and the sunscreen, the brochures warm off the press, the particular intoxicating scent of a future that someone else had already imagined for you. By 1962, 4 years in, there were 175 houses standing in all of it. By 1969, the population was 1,700. The streets outnumbered the people by a ratio that doesn't have a good name yet. Here's what California City actually runs on today: a private prison, 2,300 beds, leased to the state of California because the desert, it turns out, is very good at holding people who can't leave. A Honda test track sealed behind chain link on the north edge of town, where engineers loop prototype cars silently through corners in a city that can barely fill a single zip code. A boron mine to the east, the largest open pit in California. Edwards Air Force Base nearby, where Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier and where the most expensive aircraft ever built still pierce the sky. And just up the highway, the Mojave Air and Spaceport, where Spaceship One, the first privately funded spacecraft to reach space twice in a week, once tore a hole in the atmosphere and came back. Humanity reaching for the stars, 15 minutes from a city that couldn't reach 15,000 people. The Central Park got built, technically. The artificial lake exists, smaller than planned, quieter than imagined, ringed by the particular sadness of a good idea that had to be scaled down. Galileo Hill Park still stands, the same overlook where Mendelsohn sat in his Brooks Brothers suit, looking out over the grid that would never fill. There's no street name for him in California City, no building, no plaque, no bronze rendering of the man in the Homburg hat. The hill is the only monument he left behind, and he didn't even get to name it officially. He died in 1984, heart attack, on a golf course, in yet another resort community he'd founded, this one in Texas, building cities right up to the last fairway. But here's the part they don't put on the highway sign. Mendelsohn wasn't done after California City. After he sold the company to a Denver sugar conglomerate in 1969, he stayed on as an officer and took the same blueprint, the same pitch, the same basic hustle, and went and applied it to Cochita Pueblo Reservation in New Mexico. He called it the first new city ever built on Indian land, framed it as modernization, uplift, partnership. The Army Corps of Engineers had already flooded 4,000 acres of the Cochiti's Rio Grande farmland to build a dam the Pueblo never wanted and was never truly given a choice about. The tribal elders forced to decide between getting paid a pittance for land their people had farmed for 4,000 years, or getting nothing at all while the government took it anyway. The Corps issued a public apology in 2001. The grief didn't wait that long. Mendelsohn's operation leased the Pueblo's land from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, sold it on the same promise, collapsed when the parent company went bankrupt. The Cochiti Pueblo eventually took over the lease and fought the development off, but the damage to the farmland, to the community, to the internal divisions between families who disagreed about how to resist, outlasted every apology. California City wasn't an aberration, it was a rehearsal, and the show kept running long after Nat Mendelsohn left the building. In the 1970s, a man named Thomas Maney came to work for the company that had absorbed Mendelsohn's operation. He helped negotiate the Federal Trade Commission settlement, the one where 14,000 defrauded buyers across all three of Mendelsohn's planned cities split a $4 million refund for being misled about the value of desert dirt. Then the parent company went bankrupt. Manny quietly acquired some of its California City assets, including a rundown little desert resort called Silver Saddle Ranch and Club, and kept right on selling. By the 2000s, Silver Saddle had industrialized the con, grocery store raffles, 3 weekend vacations to a kitschy dude ranch with taxidermy jackalopes on the walls, and a water tower watching from the hill above. Buyers were driven out through the desert, shown a cluster of model homes that stopped abruptly where the development plan had given out, handed brochures that described the land as in the path of a new gold rush. Salespeople mentioned that Paul Allen and Elon Musk were investing nearby. Between 2011 and 2019 alone, Silver Saddle made $56 million selling shares of land that state investigators would later describe as near worthless. Their targets were specific: Filipino community newspapers in Los Angeles, Tagalog-speaking cold callers, Mandarin language television, Armenian radio. Buyers were separated by ethnicity upon arrival. Korean buyers paired with Korean-speaking salespeople, Filipino buyers with Tagalog speakers, and worked until the papers were signed. Many couldn't even read the contracts in English. The cancellation clause and the fine print gave them 3 days. The pressure in the room gave them less than an hour. A man named Benjamin Perez from Milpitas had been saving for years to open a food truck. His own business, something he'd built for himself. A saleswoman named Marion Ducrot assured him his $31,000 would double in a year. He invested. When he later emailed asking for a refund, she texted back threatening to sue him for defamation. I wish they realized, Perez said later, after criminal charges were finally filed in 2022, how much they cost all the families. The California Department of Business Oversight shut Silver Saddle down in 2019. Criminal charges, conspiracy, grand theft, securities fraud followed in 2022. By then, an estimated 73,000 investors had collectively lost hundreds of millions of dollars in California city land deals, stretching back to Mendelsohn's first pitch in 1958. The ranch property is currently under state receivership, permanently closed. The receiver is trying to sell it to pay back the investors. The sale, if it happens, won't come close to making anyone whole. The land is worth what the land has always been worth, which is almost nothing. Meanwhile, a second company, National Recreational Properties, was running its own version of the same game, using a television pitchman named Eric Estrada. Yeah, that Eric Estrada, Ponch from Chips. The leather-jacketed motorcycle cop who once embodied California cool on network television was, in the early 2000s, selling desert lots in infomercials for a company selling them at more than 10 times their assessed value. He was the face of the dream, the same dream, the one with the jingle. There is a version of the story where Nat Mendelsohn is a villain, a grifter in a Homburg hat who dressed up a con in the language of city planning and wrote it for 30 years. There's another version where he is something stranger, a true believer so in love with the idea of a city that he genuinely could not see the gap between pouring asphalt and filling it with life. Probably he was both. Most people who sell dreams are. The dream is real. To them, that's what makes it sell. But the real story isn't about Mendelsohn. In the end, it's about the hunger that runs so deep in this country, it has its own infrastructure. The hunger for a piece of something. A deed with your name on it. A street sign that knows you're going to build there eventually. When you get the money together, when the time is right, we have fed that hunger with the same meal, different wrapper, same bait for 67 years in one patch of Mojave Desert. We fed it until the Cochiti elders wept in their homes and a chef named Ben Perez lost his food truck and Marianne Ducrot had a lawyer threaten him for asking for his money back. The streets are still out there. 500 miles of them. Cadillac Boulevard, Chrysler Drive, Buick, Dodge, Chevy, Rommel, Judy Lane, Judy Way, Judy Court, Judy Place, Judy Drive, all looping off the same dead-end cul-de-sac named by someone who either ran out of ideas or had too many. Standpipes where water connections were promised. Poles with street signs and nothing behind them. The whole ghost grid baking in the Mojave sun, perfectly maintained, going nowhere, in a city the size of a national park, full of patience, dusty echo of 400,000 people who were never coming. So the next time you're driving through the Mojave and that green sign flashes past, California City, next exit, I want you to remember one thing. Not the con, not the jingle, not even Eric Estrada on a television at 2 a.m. Remember the man on the hill in the white gloves, looking out at the grid he'd drawn in the dirt, the streets already named, the lake already planned, the future already in his mind. Fully populated, loud with children, lit up at night. He could see it so clearly, right there, just off the highway. The city got built. Nobody ever came. This has been Drive-Thru Towns. I'm your host, Andrew Wilcox. A special thanks to Chloe Jones for providing our music. If you enjoyed this journey, please follow the podcast to stay updated on all our upcoming episodes. To keep the conversation going, you can connect with me on Instagram at 50 State Family. Find me on LinkedIn under Wilcox Legal, or reach out directly via email at wilcoxlegal@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next road.
'Cause I was wandering free on an American dream with a million things to see and do. But it's all good, I'm fine. Had the time of my life, 'cause I did it all.